Mm-hmm. Moxie, stop it. Moxie, bad. Okay. What am I doing today? Uh, okay, so I tried to do the starting position world map, this one, and that proved to be a bigger problem than I thought it was going to be. So that's why I have sort of working here. It's a similar problem to this one where it's really, it's like parsing the map. So those ones are like in line with each other. Similar concepts where I basically I have to in code determine what the hell I'm looking at here. Flatten, and then these ones are kind of the same as well. I'll put this what I should do. Flattening the chunks at water locations is the same concept of adjusting the chunk height map based on the black and white values. That might actually be the same thing. Because blacks are 0, whites are 1. I'm kind of wanting to work on this. I was looking into this a little bit this morning before the stream. I vaguely know what I want to do, but the tricky part here is like, because I want to do multiplayer, so I don't want, because right now every chunk is checking the player distance from it to determine if it should be rendered and what level of detail it should be rendered at. But I don't want it to have to iterate every chunk to iterate through every player. That's kind of expensive, right? And I want to do some more asynchronous stuff. It's getting more complicated though, and it's making it harder to make changes because there's already some async stuff. Am I going with the same stream title again today? Maybe I should call this like optimizing my procedural generated world map. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do at first, I think. So the game can actually be smooth. And then there's some issues with the PCG not generating somewhat randomly. And I think that has to do with how the chunks, a little bit of a race condition perhaps. This one, I want to get to this one today as well. So I think I want to do these two things. And so how would I optimize the chunks sorting and updating? Because right now all I'm doing is just, if there's no sorted chunks, I sort them and I update one per frame, and after that I sort them again and start over. So where's my music? That's an ad. It's an ad for Restream, which I'm already using. There we go. C++ Pro, yeah. That's me, all right. How you doing, Vinny? Any progress on your problem from yesterday at all? I think I'm gonna be doing some chunk optimization stuff today. Did I stream all night? Hell no, man. I went to bed at like I got off at like 10:30 or so. The error messages got smaller. Ah, so now you get to play the game, every developer's favorite game. Okay, is this a new message because I've broken something else, or is this a new error message because I fixed the previous one? That's always a fun game to play. Yeah, so I think I'm gonna do this today, right now. I was just updating my stream title here. Let's update that. Not even sure if the problem is CMake or InMake or MingW make. That's a lot of makes. You're making too much, I think is what's happening. I'm sure that package is being found by CMake. Hey, whatever you can do to verify some assumptions, I think, is a step in the right direction. So it sounds good to me. Sounds like you stayed up all night. Yeah, so how do I want to solve my kind of chunk conundrum? So yeah, right now I have every chunk is iterating through every player to determine which player is the closest, and if the closest player is less than or equal to the max view distance, then it renders. Doing that on every chunk does not seem like the move, but also I don't know how else I would do that. I'm also going to, in the parent class, the endless terrain that manages all the chunks, I'm going to iterate through all the players first to determine if any of them have moved enough. I think what I want to do, is every player is going to have like an array of chunks. They're going to have basically an array of, it's going to be like a sphere of influence, which is probably a concept I'll want for things outside of chunks as well. And so I was kind of thinking about this morning. I have this map that I was planning to use. And this is a map of player controllers to their last updated location. And so I wanted to, every frame, check all the players and see if they'd moved enough from their last position. And if any of them have, then I'll update all their chunks. So I think I want another map, actually, of player controller to array of terrain chunks. Pointers. What do I want to call this? This is like, we'll just call it player chunks. Player relevant chunks. That seems explanatory. And so this is going to be like the closest player to a chunk, or maybe, because what I don't want to happen is for two players to be near each other and have, and this should be a set as well. And actually, I don't want it to be a set of pointers. I want it to be coordinates of f vector 2's. Because that's like my unique identifier for chunks. And I would prefer to not have, you know, some dangling pointers when chunks get cleaned up. And so yeah, what I don't want to happen is there to be overlapping of these sets. Because that would mean I'm updating a chunk multiple times. Well, the chunk update function isn't actually that expensive. This is the most expensive part of it. That, and then when I actually set it up for like the first time. Those are the most expensive parts. But this happens on load. This happens on load and when it changes LODs for the first time. I should probably just load all LODs up front so that like we don't have to call this. But maybe that's when I'll probably profile this and see what's going on before I do anything like that. But what I'm trying to say is like if I get rid of the need to call this within the update terrain chunk function, it's not that expensive. This happens asynchronously. And so maybe it's not a big deal that I might have overlapping player sets. A T set cannot be used as a value in a map. Spare me. Why are you like this, Unreal? Because it's pointers. It's gonna have to be a set of... I'm gonna have to make a struct for it then. That's annoying. Oh boy. F, Copilot nailed that. So I'm gonna have to create a T set of player relevant chunks. It's so annoying that like maps aren't really supported well in Unreal, because I know you can't replicate them either. Well, that makes things difficult. So I'll have my essentially what is this? Yes. Player controller and the set of chunks that that is relevant to that player. And then I mean, I think I can write something intelligent. I think I'm capable of that. But I think I can write something somewhat smart to make sure that there's no overlapping chunks to make it just a little bit more efficient. And so when I'm sorting the chunks, because right now, where is it happening now? Focal locations. Yeah, so this is happening when I'm sorting them for, for each focal location, which is the, it's the location of a controller, essentially a player controller. And this is, and I'm doing this to like set up the initial chunks. So I'll need to think about when the thing first loads and when it's like running in the background. So when something first loads, I do need to get, yeah, for each location. I essentially need to build out this player relevant chunks list and then iterate through it and do all the updates afterwards. Okay, so I'm just gonna write a function here. I'll say calc player relevant chunks. This is just gonna be where I do the work at. And yeah, I want to do something similar here, so let's do this. And I don't want focal locations. I want, What am I doing here? Yeah. Yes. If I have game state, the player controller's in there. If not, I'm just going to, what am I going to do? It's going to be... So I need to build out both the relevant chunks and the last updated player locations. So this one will be easy to build. I'll just do .add. I think I'll need to change this here in a bit, but we're just going to start with this player controller and player controller get focal location. Yeah, I'll need to update that actually to know if I'll actually. I'll need a threshold as well. Let me write that. Player move update threshold. I think I'm going to make it about the size of a chunk, which is 12,000. Why is this colored weird? Not using that yet. We'll ignore that for now. So for each player controller, I need to figure out need to get the player relevant chunks. If it, I'll say if this contains player controller. What is it? What's the problem here? Oh, right. Okay, so I need to create like an equality operator here. I'm so glad Ryder can just do this. Like, oh, that's so nice. You know what I mean? Player controller is the key, essentially. And I should probably... I'm going to make a constructor here, so I can just... a player controller... Might as well add chunks here as well, right? Can I default that? No, I can't, can I? That's annoying. Maybe I won't add chunks in there then. Just to make that a little prettier. And if I need a different constructor, I'll make it. So if I'm calculating player relevant chunks, do I even care what the previous ones were? Oh, this is going to take multiple passes, isn't it? rename this to chunks list, chunks set. Then I'll just reassign this. Why is it find? Is it find? I guess it is. It returns as a pointer. Okay, sure. So now I have my player relevant chunks, which could be just an empty one. Or it could be the new one. I mean, maybe I could do something to where, like, I can check if... No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Because essentially what I'm going to need to do is iterate through every player and calculate all of the chunks that need to be rendered, and then like dedupe from each player's list to where each chunk has a reference to its most relevant player or its closest player, right? And whenever that player moves enough, then it re-renders. Does that solve the problem? Well, no, because then a different player could move into the chunk, right? Well, no, when any player moves too much, we need to recalculate their closest chunks, their relevant chunks. And then once we have their relevant chunks, we need to check every other player's relevant chunks. To see if it's contained there, and then like potentially reassign the closest player. Is that more performant than just iterating through each player and iterating through each chunk every time? Okay, so like what's happening here? This is what I was doing before. For each player, or each chunk within range, I get the chunk, and then after this function we update it, which the update function calls, it iterates through closest players as well to determine what LOD it needs to be. Do I do that, or do I iterate through the players and build a list of chunks around them? I mean, it feels like the same. It feels like the same thing, same time complexity to me. So I'm iterating through players, iterating through every chunk around the player, and then checking each previous player's relevant chunks to see if a chunk is contained. This may be a little bit less, but is it even worth changing? So let me copy this here. Because this is iterate through visible chunks. This is chunk location. And so we have a visible chunk, and so essentially I'll like take this. Add that. Let's add overwrite. B is already in set pointer. What is it? Optional pointer to bool that will be set depending on whether the element is already in the set. So does this override? I'll just assume that it does. That's probably a bad assumption, but yeah, so this builds a, I guess I can't really test the deduping. I may need a list of like already seen chunks. A set of already seen chunks. I want to empty this at the beginning of this. And so when I come across a collision like this, I want to check that or I'm gonna check. Oh, Buntology, thank you for the follow, mate. Appreciate that. I finally got my little followers bar working properly, so that actually shows that you updated. Thank you. Thank you so much. Trying to get to 50 to get affiliates, so every follow is like awesome right now. So yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by as well. I'm trying to figure out how to best render all of my terrain chunks like efficiently. Before I was in a situation where I was just like updating one chunk per frame. And then once they had all been updated, I would go back through and sort them based on the distance to the player, and then just go back through and update one per frame again. But that's not it. I just did that as kind of like a workaround so that they didn't all update in the same frame and be super laggy. But now I'm trying to be smarter about it. And the specific problem I'm working on right now is that it's going to be multiplayer, so I can't just check one player's location, which would be easy. I need to check every player's location. And that can get expensive, especially if I'm updating every chunk for every player. So I'm trying to figure out like a smart way to do that and to not update chunks twice in the same, batch. So I'm like trying to like dedupe, and I'm basically going to assign each chunk like a closest player, or like it's almost like what player is controlling the chunk render cycle. And so yeah, I'm just trying to build out like a map of, I have these are the relevant variables I've created. I have this struct that just contains the player controller and then what chunks are relevant to that player controller. And then right now I'm trying to dedupe that so the chunk lists are distinct and don't have any overlap. And so I have this like already seen chunks list, Let's see, I'm just working with coordinates here, which is like my unique identifier for a chunk. I haven't actually spawned any chunks yet, so I can't really assign an owner to a chunk class. I will need to maintain another map. If already seen chunks contains coordinate, I'll essentially need to find which player controller. Let me write this in a comment. Find which player controller has this chunk. And check if this controller is closer than that controller. Because we care about the closest player because each chunk changes its level of detail based on which player is closest. And you know, now that I think about that, maybe I should look into Unreal Engine's built-in LOD system rather than continuing to do my own. I can't imagine that it would work for procedural mesh, though. Let me do a quick Google search here. Unreal Engine HLOD for procedural mesh. Procedural mesh component. I'm working on a city generator right now, and I push out all the vertices, 1.7 milliverts, into a single debug mesh to visualize the road meshes, and the FPS is 120 FPS. Then I generate individual meshes, which sums up to the same number, but the FPS drops to about 30, as the batch call is drastically reduced. Interesting. So one mesh is actually more, render-wise, more performant, is what I'm hearing from this guy. But that works for static meshes. There we go. Here's a question. Seems relevant. There's a plugin. So yeah, it looks like nothing built into Unreal can handle this. So it looks like I will just need to continue with my own LOD system. Yeah, it sounds like that person built their own as well. Yeah, so it sounds like everyone's making their own. So I think I'm doing the right thing here. Okay, so where was I? Trying to find the player controller, find which player controller has this chunk, and check if this controller is closer than that controller, and then reassign if necessary. And so if I keep everything in sets, it should be a constant time complexity operation. So that should be efficient. But I would almost need like I need yet another map, I think, of like so rather than my already seen chunks, I'm gonna turn this into a map because it'll serve the same purpose here. Where the key is the chunk coordinate, which is vector 2, and the value is a player controller pointer. Ah, fuck, you can't put pointers in maps. Oh, I hate this. And if I put it as a U property, oh no, you just can't use them as the keys in maps. Or wait, what the hell was my issue? Because I'm doing it right here. Oh, it was an array. That's what it was. That's why I had to create this struct. It didn't like collections in a map. Unreal Engine does not like nested things. And I assume they did that. They probably did that so the editor details window doesn't get crazy. Because like essentially you could just nest things infinitely, and then like the editor window, like the details panel would probably just crash. So they're probably just saving you from shooting yourself in the foot by doing that. But anyways, if my already seen chunks contains that coordinate, then already seen chunks find chord. This will be the we'll just call this other player controller. Then I'll need to compare these distances to each other. Yeah, so let's do float other player dist equals f vector distance between the other player controller get focal location. Oh, this is a pointer of a pointer, so I need to dereference that. And then chunk location is not the world location. And I think I have a function for that, don't I? Get terrain chunk loc. Yeah, so let me refactor this to be a bit more explicit. Get terrain chunk world location. Get terrain chunk world size, world location. There we go. And give it the coordinate. Then I'll need to do the same with whatever controller I am currently iterating over. I'll just call this this player distance. And I'll need to compare if this player distance is less than other player distance, then we can swap essentially. Do I need to remove it first? Hang on. Unreal Engine map does add replace. The existing value associated with the key will be overridden with a new value. Okay, that's all I need to know. So I don't need to do that. And I should rename this variable to be something more like, it's not just already seen chunks, it's chunk closest player. Okay, and so now that I have that, let's get some new lines in here. So now that I have this chunk to closest player map, that is essentially going to be my terrain chunk map, which I think I already have. Well, that's storing my vector, my coordinate to the actual terrain chunk class. And so what am I doing now? Player relevant chunk set. What am I doing with that now? And so this, if other player controller, I essentially don't need to add this chord. actually going to inverse this. Do a guard rather, keep it a little more simple. So if it doesn't contain the coordinates, well, we should add it to that map as well. So that needs to happen in both cases. How would I write a condition to like cleanly so rather I should switch this and then continue here. And then put this at the bottom. And then wrap this in the do one of these right here. Okay. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, if the current controller that we're iterating over is farther than the chunks owner that it already has, the chunks closest player that it already has, we'll skip it. We don't need to do anything. Otherwise, if chunks closest player doesn't contain the coordinate, or it has a irrelevant chunks. Do I need to do this? Chunk closest, yeah, because that would reassign it. Yeah. So this would reassign if there's already one existing, and so we would need to remove it from the other list of player relevant chunks. So I need to do that here. Other player controller. There we go. And this is going to be really fucking hard to test because don't exactly have multiplayer working correctly, but so this may be something that remains broken for a while until that happens. Player relevant chunk set, find it. I'll do a guard here just to prevent any potential crashes. If it should be the case already. That should be the case already. I'm gonna rename this to new player relevant chunks. I think that explains what I'm doing here a little better. So what do I have here? I'm iterating through every chunk with invisible distance for every player, and I'm assigning the chunks to the closest player. That's what I have here. And if what I want to do is kind of skip all this, yeah, so let's do something like if last update player locations contains this controller, and This might be kind of a long condition. And the player controller, so I have a vector now. This is the last location. Let's put this inside here. I'll say if last location. I need to do a distance between the last location and the current location. Distance last location and player controller get focal location is greater than the player move threshold. And this should probably be an editable U property, so I can tinker with it. Say greater than or equal. Or rather, I should say, if it's less than, then I just continue. Skip this player. And then if any other player has A, moved enough, and B, is closer than this player, it will reassign itself and take over for this player as the chunk owner. This player hasn't moved enough, skip. Players moved enough, so when we get here, players moved enough. Update the last location. This is get relevant chunks, or this is like get or init player relevant chunks. This is calc. Calculate the chunk that the player is in. Iterate over chunks and add them to the player's relevant chunks. Well, I'll probably write that down in here. Iterate over chunks within the player's view distance. So this is kind of contradicting. So, because it's like, it's making a square, I'll say checks for radius from the player. View dist radius from the player. Just to explain why we need to do that. If this chunk is already assigned to a player, check if this player is closer. Yep. And reassign. Check if this player is closer. This player is not closer, so skip. This player is closer, so remove the chunk from the other player's relevant chunks. And this will be like to this player's. Wait, I don't need to do that part right there. What's happening in my backyard right now? Oh, my neighbor's mowing. Okay, so yeah, so this is the other player controller, so I do need to do this. Okay, so now this is all commented very nicely. Okay, so this feels good. So I have calc player relevant chunks. So now these lists should be built out. And when I update the terrain chunk, I should already have the closest player built out. And so in my terrain chunk update function, I will no longer need to iterate over every player. I will no longer need to iterate over every player in every chunk now. If if I wrote this right. We'll fucking see if that's the case. Okay, so where do I go from here? I have this calculation. How often am I going to run this? Right, this can be a completely asynchronous operation. But do I want to run it like on a timer? Do I just want to have it constantly running in the background? What am I thinking here? What do I... Yeah, because this can be completely async. So it's like I can do this async, and I have this process chunks function, which sorts visible chunk. I could like run this async and then call back to the game thread at the end of it. To iterate through it and update the chunks. And honestly, I should be building out another list here. Another set of chunks, and that should be chunk to distance. That's a map of chunk to distance. And it should be an ordered, or maps ordered in Unreal Engine. I'm gonna guess probably not. Unreal Engine is tmap ordered. Oh, it can be sorted, but it's only guaranteed until the map is modified again. Sorting is unstable, so equivalent elements in a multi-map. Let's go to the actual documentation instead of relying on the AI. Sort. You can sort a map by key or value. After sorting iteration over the map presents the elements in sorted order, but it's only guaranteed until next time you modify. It's unstable. Equivalent elements may appear in any order. It says this is talking about a team multi-map. Does it matter if it's just a team map? Let me God, my phone is going the fuck off right now. And this is going to be a chunk to, should it just be an array? Because all I'm going to do is iterate over it, over the chunk coordinates. It should just be T array of chunks. So yeah, I might replace that with a T array of chunk coordinates. I'll say sorted chunk coords. And sorted by what? I'll say sorted. Sorted chunks. Let's just call it closest chunk coords. And so when I check this distance, you know, I could do like a binary insert. Is there such a thing? Like an insert sorted or something? Nah. I mean, if this is going to happen asynchronously, then the sort may not be that impactful. Yeah, I guess I do need to, yeah, this needs to be like a map. Because I need to, or no, I can just get the closest. Never mind, never mind. Hang on, my dog is freaking out. Okay. God. Um. I should build this out ahead of time because I'm gonna have to just like pass so much stuff in here. Okay, and so if we get here, it's not in the array already. So this map should be distinct. I mean, it's a map, so yeah, it always should be. And if I'm here, it already should have been added, right? If chunk closest player, maybe I should just do this because it'll already have the distance assigned to it and I won't need to do this. So this would, yeah, this is going to return the distance to the previous closest player. We can get rid of that. Do this. So maybe I don't need this map anymore. Player relevant chunks set contains other player controller. I mean, I guess I do need that. Yeah, I mean, all I need that map for is to tie back to, well, no, I can just do this. I can just do this. Because I did the equality operator. Wait, no, I need coordinate to player controller. Never mind, I'm dumb. should actually be a value sort, right? Sorts the pairs array using each pair's value as the sort criteria, then rebuilds. Wait, so do I need to pass anything into here? I mean, yeah. It should just be a float. And I'm just sorting this so that I get the most relevant chunks processed first. I actually don't know if I'll need the player relevant chunk set map now. Because I have a combination of the rest of these. I'm gonna just run live coding on this and see if it fails. It probably will. I feel like that predicate for the sort function isn't correct. Yeah. Good lord. Can I get a line number, please? Okay, here we go. Here's a good line number. 119. It's actually here. Okay, so this doesn't, so the equality operation doesn't work. Why doesn't that work? What is it complaining about? Does it need a pointer? Confused at what this is saying, what this is needing. Why doesn't it like my equality operation? What is it expecting this to be? The structure F player relevant chunks is used in a T-set, but does not have a get value type hash defined. Hash function? Okay. Let's get type hash. What did it want? It wanted get value type hash. Maybe it just needs a get type hash? Because I just want to do the player control. I don't care about the chunks, right? Just the hash of the player. See if that actually makes it stop complaining to me? Nope, not at all. Why is Visual Studio starting? What the hell? Sir, I did not call you. No overloaded function could convert all the argument types. I mean, like I was saying before, I may not even need this, so I might just get... Let me look at, see if I even need that before I try and, spend an hour fixing it. All I'm doing here is, I mean, I think I have this information by combination of all the other sets that I have. So I'm just going to get rid of it for now. Okay, let's try that now. Well, let's get rid of that. And that. And I'll cry if I actually end up needing that and have to put that all back in. I am optimistic about this, though. Man, I really need to make some of these functions private. So I don't have to sit here and wait so long for it to compile. We good? Are you gonna patch it? I mean, it says it was good, so I'll trust that. So that compiled. Now what do I do with this function? Calc player relevant chunks. So what I was saying was that I kind of want this to just run in the background constantly. Asynchronously, of course. And then that will, so closest chunk chords, this should be emptied as well. Each time this runs. And maybe I'll change this to, change the name to like calc play relative to calc closest chunk chords to better represent what it does. And so rather than sort visible chunks, I should call calc closest chunk chords. I want to run that asynchronously. And then when it's done, maybe it'll have a delegate. Well, it'll call back to the game thread. And I should be able to tell if I should be able to tell in here if the chunk even needs to be updated, right? Well, no, I'll have to iterate over the list again because it could. Get out of here. Fucking gnat. Yeah, I'll need to iterate over it after this and determine which chunks actually need to be updated. How do I want to do this though? How do I want to do this? So I'm going to keep all this here. Just write something new here, and I'll maybe do like async task. Does this return anything, or does it return void? Maybe I should do like a runnable. I could just make like a bool. Like if it's not currently calculating, then calculate it. But I also don't want to like just be constantly iterating over every single player. Yeah. And so from here, is this what I would want to do on the game thread? Because I'm going to get respond chunk at position, and I'm pretty sure this needs to happen on the game thread. Yeah, because I'm spawning things. Yeah, so this basically needs to happen. Maybe happen on the, I mean, and then we get here. Yeah, we initialize and we're not doing, does LOD mesh do anything crazy? No. So we do the expensive stuff async. So that this can happen on the game thread. And then I'm forcing a init. What does force a init do? I forget here. Okay, so I'm initial. Yeah, right. Because this is what I this was a fix for like. Yeah. Default that to false. Force it there. chunk entry, and this will be chunk entry dot key. I have to remember that my camera is like covering up. Right. And so I have this getter spawn chunk at position. Does this add to? Yeah. And then what? Yeah, and then I call update or something. It's like getter spawn chunk at position, and it just returns the chunk. But like if I force a init, it's going to, if I'm not mistaken, update itself from the request mesh function. Requesting, yeah, and then at the very end it updates the terrain chunk. And I'm going to change this to be async too once I verify all this is working. And so I only need to call update. Yeah, so okay. So this function should instead be getter spawn chunk at position. I'm just going to quickly update this to else chunk update terrain chunk. And I should be able to now pass in the distance here. Because that this chunk entry now has the closest player distance. So that's cool. But I'll refactor this in a bit. I think instead I'm just going to refactor this so I don't have to change, because I don't want to change everything else in case this breaks. I want to have that as a reference. And so we're going to comment that out. Instead, we'll just say, oh, hang on, let me go back. I'm going to copy it first. Copy. I'm going to paste it. That was the old way. Comment that out for now. And now I do endless terrain. Closest chunk chords. This is the distance. And so if this distance is less than max view distance, but this should never be the case. I should never be calling update chunk on things that don't need to be updated. That's a problem though, because I need it to turn off. Right, okay, so I'm calculating the closest chunks, but I'm not updating the old ones that have gone out of range. Shit. How do I do that? How do I do that? Yeah, so as I'm... Yeah, I need that, this is why I did that array of visible terrain chunks. Because really what I'll want to do is like... These were like the last visible ones. And as I iterate through my now closest terrain chunks, I should remove them from... These are going to be like the dangling chunks that need to be cleaned up. And so as I do that, this returns a chunk, so let's still return that. And so I need to remove this from some list. And like any of the remaining ones, I'll need to clean up. So how am I calculating this right now? Visible terrain chunks. When the chunk finishes generating, it adds it. If it's visible. If not, it removes it. Is it used elsewhere outside of this class? Only in config. Okay, so we're good there. I think I may want to change this to no longer be removed here. or rather chunk finished generating. If it's visible, added. I mean, when the chunk finishes generating, where is this called at? It should always be, I mean, it's async, so maybe not, but it should always have been called from a time when it was valid. But again, it's all async, so I can't really like, I need to create like a new list. Yeah, this is going to be like, last closest chunk chords. And what I'm going to do is when I calculate it, we'll save it. We're going to save the old list. And as we go through and we're processing things in the new list, we're going to remove it from the old list. And then any remaining after this runs, we will want to clean up. Yeah. I think this will get us what we want. I think it'll clean up things very nicely as well. Let me check this function out real quick. Yeah, we're cleaning up the chunk and stuff. Should I remove, because I'll have bound a function to this. Do I need to remove that? I mean, it's getting deleted, so does it even matter if it's still hanging around there? On chunk finished generating, remove all. Yeah. Remove all. There's one parameter. What's the parameter? Okay, yeah. Remove all from this. This doesn't call destroy. Where did I end up doing that? Chunk. Is the chunk cleaning itself up? Destroy? No chunks are getting destroyed anymore. What the hell happened? Or am I just relying on them not being in memory anywhere? I'll destroy it there against my better judgment. Okay. So recap, we calculate the closest chunk coordinates based on player distance. For each one of those entries, we're gonna spawn or update, basically. And then last closest chunks. As we're doing that, we're removing from this, and then any remaining we clean up. And so what I'll need to do now is, so yeah, that all sounds good. What I'll need to do now is I need to kind of rewrite my ready, it's basically ready to spawn, my player stuff here. And I was determining how many chunks to be loaded. I mean, it's because like this is all async, and I have this like chunk finished generating thing that should be being bound. And from here, what do I do? And I need to do this. In the game thread. Do it like that. And I'm kind of thinking about only doing a few chunks at a time in the game thread. Because if I iterate through every chunk when this is done, because this is happening every tick. I don't want it to happen every tick, so I'll need some guards here as well. Yeah, let's do that real quick. We'll be updating chunks is false. Return here, so don't continue if we're updating chunks. And to determine when my character should spawn. Should I just call like a... Should I make a delegate here and just call it? Broadcast it? I kind of want to. Declare delegate. I don't think I don't need multicast. Yeah, maybe I'll need multicast. Declare multicast delegate. F on chunks finished generating. And so my procedural terrain subsystem can bind to this, and when the chunks are finished generating, it can spawn the player. if the player isn't already spawned. Okay, so if we set the endless terrain, so let's just comment that out for now. It'll call on terrain loaded, and this should have, yeah, player needs to spawn, finish teleporting players. Then I'm going to comment out all this stuff as well. And so I guess one thing for my teleport function, how do I handle it? Because this is going to be happening asynchronously, I need to know when, like, I don't know, if someone moves too much, I need to, like, abandon this and redo it, I think. Because with my teleport function, you can teleport to just like a different section of the map, and if I'm in the middle of like calculating chunks, it may not pick up on that. It's almost like I kind of feel like I need my own like subsystem for like calculating the player movement and then dispatching a delegate whenever someone has moved enough. And then this class will bind to that delegate, and whenever that fires, it'll recalculate and interrupt this. I kind of want to see if this works as it is right now. Let's try it. Fuck it. Alright, I'm gonna run to the bathroom. We're back and unmuted now. Sick. Okay. Switch over to our actual level here. Yeah, fuck it. Let's see if it works. I'm kind of expecting this to crash, but there it is. There it is. Okay, so I called update before I calculated the. So I think I need to stop that there. Yeah, that's what needed to happen. Okay, try again. Try it again. Okay, this won't crash this time, for sure, 100%. Things are happening. Oh, it did crash. Okay, okay. I assume that's pair not equal to null pointer. Is this null? Let's look at my variables here. Where are my new ones at? Okay, closest chunk coordinates is empty. The last closest chunk coordinates is not. All these look good. Which is interesting. Why is closest chunk chords? Oh, you know what I need to do? Okay, there is a case that I didn't handle. And that is the case of starting when there is no, that's what was happening there. I think. Well, actually, I don't know what was happening there. And let's do terrain chunk map, just to make sure this shouldn't be the case. And it was only the case there, because I messed up a little bit. But we'll just do this there to make sure. In the calculate closest chunk chords, if there is none, if there are no player controllers, that's the issue. If there are no player controllers, let me first find out when I'm assigning these. So whenever the, let me look at these logs then. Let me look when this happens. Do I even have the old? I don't have the logs anymore. Or I have it here. Sick, sick. Even better. So it begins play. Oh, I need to get rid of that. Yeah, that's clogging up logs for sure. But so this got generated right here. That's where those were getting called from. So the player controller gets created Oh my goodness. After that starts happening, which is not what I want. And so, I mean, do I actually need to do anything about that? Let me think here. So processing chunks, if be updating chunks, skip. Otherwise, we're going to calculate chunks. And iterate through all the controllers. This is going to be empty. And so we're going to get in here. This is going to be empty. Nothing happens here. Nothing's going to happen here. And we're going to call chunks finished generating. Because nothing happened. So I wonder, I should like, if this is empty, we just return. And I'll need to do this as well. But like this may never... Let's see what happens here. Let's see, I don't know if the controller is actually going to get spawned. Because I have my game mode set up to spawn players as spectators first, and then I determine when they should spawn. So what I'm questioning is if that spectator controller is my player controller class or not. Is there like a spectate? I'm wondering if I'll have to change things to... I may change it to where when the game state starts, it just finds all the player controllers, all the spectator controllers or something. Oh, I should have cleared my logs. Nothing spawned, except for that one. So why did only one spawn? It's such a random coordinate. Oh, okay. Only a few spawned. Uh-oh, I think I have a condition backwards somewhere. Hang on. Update chunk. If closest chunk coords, this will be the distance. If it's less than max view distance, no, yeah, I did do opposite. If it's greater than max view distance. Yep. Oh my god, come on, man. Why is Unreal Engine is using 12 gigs of memory, man? Am I like, let me look at that function real quick just to make sure I'm not doing anything like super stupid. I'm not like passing anything anywhere. I'm like, there's a lot of duplication though. Yeah, like look, I'm just using 13 gigs. That's crazy. my player spawned already. So I don't think is what I'm wanting. Yeah, this is happening quite poorly. Jesus. Oh god, that scared me. What is happening? Oh, I'm spawning everything at full LOD. Which is spawning all these trees and foliage. Okay, yeah, I need to... One, I'm going to turn down the max view distance while I'm testing this. From 168 back down to 84,000. And then in my terrain chunks, yeah, I think what's happening now... Okay, so my closest player distance, I need to pass it down there to the correct... Honestly, I could probably rewrite this in a better way. No, I mean, this is good, because then I won't need to iterate over here, but I think that's probably what was causing that. Yeah. As for the massive amount of memory that was being taken up, I guess the new collections that I created are to blame for that. And I'm going to profile this once I get this working correctly. And maybe I can run a little memory profile on it. See what's taking up so much memory. Hi, Moxie. Okay, let's try again. It should be quicker now. Yeah, that happened a lot quicker. It didn't happen correctly, but it happened quicker. It is still spawning all of the PCG stuff. It is in full LOD, isn't it? Yep. It looks cool. Why is that happening, though? It should not be. I'm going to put a breakpoint here because I want to see what the... Yeah, I want to see the closest chunk chords map. And let me look at my order of operations here. I need to do 32 recursions to find the proper spawn location for this seed. So yeah, so it's spawning the character, and then it's initializing all the chunks. Yeah, and that's called from like... These are happening all from PCG. Okay, so I'm okay with the character spawning before the chunks are loaded for now. I do want to figure out why it's all spawning at the highest LOD. These all look like the correct distances. And so when we're in terrain chunk, did I not? Something wasn't updated here. Closest player distance is almost 17K, which is less than that. If is greater than. This is in terrain chunk -1, 1. Oh, this is in -1, 0. We're gonna skip that one. 12K. So anything under 18K is LOD 0. LOD 0. LOD 0. LOD 0. Again. Okay, that one. Okay, here we go. If this is greater than endless terrain detail levels, what is I? Do I have I right now? I is 0. It's greater than 18,000. If 24K is greater than 18,000, yes, so I should reach that. I do. Okay. And so okay, skip forward. Yeah, this is the next level. Yeah, and so new LOD index is 1. So it should be generating some, no? Okay, that looks better. So I guess just something wasn't Something wasn't updated in the terrain chunk class. So yeah, that looks good now. Okay. That's all figured out. And now I need to get my spawning in order. So what I need is to extract all this out into a this is also player controller centric, right? I'm going to put a breakpoint here, and I'm going to see what this initially is. I'm going to guess it's empty. Yeah. And why am I creating an additional... Yeah, I was going to like plug in like a dummy. I was going to plug in a dummy controller. So let me actually open up the game state. Switch gears here a little bit to... I think on begin play, I should log this. I want to basically, what is it, gameplay statics? Yeah, get all actors of class. And I'm just going to get all player controllers. But the thing is, when is on terrain loaded getting called? Is the player already spawned at this point? Kind of hard to tell because I didn't clear my logs. Let's try that again. It has. How? So wait, that never happened. Where the hell is the character getting spawned from? Am confused. Am confused. I don't have it set to game mode. It should be like is it like start players as spectators is true. That is true. I'm so confused as to where that would have happened from. Because this, I mean, this function never got reached. Or at least it did, but after the character had already been spawned. There it is. Wait, it did. Wait, what am I looking at? Ooh. Okay, it did get reached. Why didn't... Okay, so what I'm seeing now... The player controller spawns. And instantly... No. It begins play. Okay, so that player controller should be here. I'm so confused at the order of operations of what's happening. Okay, so the very first thing that happens... Let's look at the logs. Okay, so... Game state, begin play. Player controller, begin play. We get here, and there is one controller. Which is actually what I want, right? But... It's not waiting to spawn the player. It does a bunch of initializing. And then where is my breakpoint at? I've forgotten. The chunks have finished generating, but they haven't. Right. Yeah, because I need to like, yeah. Okay, so I think I know. I think I know now. I don't need that. Yeah, I need that. Excuse me. On chunk finish generating. Yeah. Chunk finish generating. Should really be if chunks loaded is empty, we return. No, we don't. Yeah, so if the number of loaded chunks, and I should still be doing this, right? Yeah, on chunk finish generating. Honestly, do I need to do this in tick and make it more complicated, or should I? Hang on. If chunks loaded is greater than or equal to the closest chunk chords.num, then we've finished generating them. Closest chunk coordinates is empty, and we need to calculate them. But if it's not empty, ugh, God, what do I need to put here? I think if chunks loaded isn't empty, we skip. Right? Why is this boggling my mind so much? If chunks loaded is greater than or equal to, I might as well do this in tick. So I think I'll need to do it anyway. Stop. If chunks loaded is greater than or equal to the closest chunk words, then we're done generating. We can broadcast, but then we want to start the recalculation as well. But I don't want to recalculate if, well, one, if we are currently updating. But I also don't want to calculate while, or the opposite of this. Just less than. So while the number of loaded chunks is less than the closest chunk coordinates, then we wait, essentially. But chunks loaded is going to start at 0. So it's always, well, then at that point it would be equal to closest chunk coordinates, because closest chunk coordinates is going to be 0 as well. So I think this works. And then I can probably, so it's going to start at 0. So this needs to say closest chunk chords is empty. Rather not empty. If closest chunk coordinates isn't empty, and the number of chunks loaded is greater than or equal to closest chunk chords, then we've finished generating. Like if it's a non-zero number, basically. Let's try this and see how it goes. Okay, let's restart. That worked perfectly, and it was happening very fast. Wow, okay. Holy shit, did I do it? I'm waiting to see this start generating things again. But I essentially have to move, there we go. Pause for a sec. Oh no, that was something different, okay. Uh-oh. Clean up PCG. Is this null or something? What's going on here? Okay, yeah, we just have a check state. What? And so what is this complaining about? I have no, and this is giving me 0 information. It's not even telling me like what chunk I'm in. It's trying to do a scoped transaction. Okay, so here's where it is. What is happening here? This happens when I clean up the... I clean up PCG asynchronously. Yeah, I don't get what this is saying to me. What is this saying? I don't see anything for this. Yeah, there's like fucking nothing. I mean, it's recoverable from, right? Damn, so that took a while. Hang on, pause there. I want to see some of these things over here. So I initialized a bunch of new chunks, and those would have been like the lower LOD ones on the outskirts. Yeah, I think my threshold needs to move to be lower. I think it probably needs to be like a half chunk size. Then I'm gonna stop logging that like every frame as well. Did drop down to like 30, 40 frames whenever that stuff started happening. I am going to profile this a little bit. And for that, I think I'll need to rebuild the engine to get the latest. Yeah. So I'm gonna do that real quick and Oh my god, my mic has been fucking muted this whole time. It's been muted for like a good half hour at least. Okay, we'll just play an editor and run around. Maybe just profile it in editor for a little bit. Preparing mesh distance fields. Why is that running? I'm actually getting 120 FPS here. Then is enabled but cannot render. Is that PCG that's telling me that? Dude, with nanite disabled, I'm getting so much higher frames. Like, holy shit. Like, holy shit, this is so much better. Okay, we have a crash. That is good. That is good. Okay, yeah, so it's like by the time this finished requesting mesh, it's not valid anymore? Is that what this condition is? Why would that have happened, though? I'm trying to think of the condition here. Let's go here. What does endless terrain look like? What's the state of endless terrain here? Terrain chunk map has 159. Oh, you know what? Is it, so I just call it cleanup chunk. Yeah, so what chunk am I on here? Terrain chunk -7, 1. No chunks have been cleaned up. That's weird. This is for -7, 1. So I think this would be one that's like... Okay, so this is coming from the init method. It's asynchronous. We request a mesh. And we update the chunk. And it's no longer in the closest chunk chords. And so when I init the chunks, They would have get or spawn chunk at location. So it's like by the time it got done generating, it essentially was, it had calculated again and wasn't in there. So, I mean, in that case, I mean, it's a weird case. If the chunk finished generating, do I want to call that on that case though? I'm just worried about that throwing off my like chunks loaded calculation. I don't think that would be. Well, it chunks too low. It removes the turn. Yeah, I don't know if I want to call the chunk finish generating. Okay, so let's just say if it doesn't, or we'll do this in a different condition. Let's just return false here. And just we'll see what happens here. Maybe we want to broadcast this, I'm not quite sure. All right, just in time. I'm gonna guess. Nanon, is it where is that coming from? I don't know where that would be coming from. I feel like I can ignore that for now, though. So what happened to my 120 frames that I was just getting? Because I'm only at like 80. What chunk is this? 02? I think that got cleaned up. Take a peek here at some of these spikes. What was this one? PCG graph executor. Interesting. So that is the biggest part there. I wonder if I should just set this to generate it at runtime rather than at demand and then let it handle itself rather than trying to handle it myself. Transform PCG points to chunk vertices. Yep, that's an expensive one. Yeah, the PCG graph is definitely my most expensive thing. I wonder if there's a better way to make that run more async. Hmm. Yeah, let me... I'm just gonna try this out because instead of generating it myself, I'll just set it to generate it at runtime. Scheduled by the runtime generation, runtime generated. I'm gonna see if this actually gets it generated. And if not, I guess we'll just test. It'll be a good way to isolate the chunk logic and test it. And so no, that did not generate. So I'm just gonna run for a while and see if there's any hitches. There was one right there. So it's the camera? Like, what would the camera be doing? Because, I mean, I feel like this is kind of a red herring. I feel like these tasks, this is actually some of my, like, chunk logic. And it's, I don't, says wait, block on parallel evaluation task. Okay, another one. That was just garbage collection. The PCG component is trying to do stuff, but nothing is happening. Hmm. Yeah, so from about here to here is where that happened. I mean, all things considered. Do I have my chunks tick turned on? That doesn't happen every frame, does it? Go to a random frame. No, it doesn't. But when it does, it goes from like your world tick goes from like 2 milliseconds to 6. Honestly, it's this camera component that's like... Register or update PCG. I want to test it a bit differently. We are going to see how fast it updates. So there's definitely a possibility of some dangling. Let's teleport somewhere. Yeah, I don't know if this works. Yeah, because it goes based on the player controller focal location. So it never changes. Hmm. There's a teleport player class or function. Oh, that's my own function. Okay, I'm gonna take a break now and potentially stream later. Maybe not. If not, perhaps tomorrow.